Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, back with, surprise surprise, another Slimline card. Can't help it, I'm obsessed, I love it. So, just got Simon Says Stamps Crafty Hugs release and couldn't resist pulling some of it out and creating with it. So this is the Work of the Heart stamp set. So I had a rough idea, kind of had laid things out before I started filming and all that, so I knew what I wanted to use. So I got the stamps I wanted out of the set lined up in my MISTI stamping platform. And I have some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White cardstock, and I am inking up the stamps with Simon's Intense Black ink, stamping them a couple times because they're brand new stamps. They need a little bit of conditioning, being inked up a few times, all that fun stuff. So I'm going to stamp these a couple times till I'm happy with them. And then I'm going to do some very, very simple Copic coloring. Obviously I wanted like the lab coat, doctor's coat to be white. So I'm only adding just the tiniest bit of gray to this with a C3 Copic marker. Just kind of going along. I didn't do any blending. I was gonna originally, but then I was like, nope, this looks perfect. So I added that. And then I'm going to use pinks and aquas for these images because this is also for this week's color throwdown challenge, which normally I would go with florals because florals is the answer to everything. But then when I was looking at the set, I was like, ooh, this would look really nice too. So that's what I did. So I'm using some pink Copic markers to do like the stethoscope and the heart on the little chart. And then there's little hearts on the one of the band-aids, and then the little cross symbol on the pill bottle and the little like band-aid box. So super cute. So color those in with the pinks and just doing my typical like darkest to lightest with images like this, like no experience necessary, like just simple, easy coloring. So went along, used a little bit of darker grays on the parts of the stethoscope, the little like the metal part on the top of the clipboard, and then just add a tiny bit of gray to the top of the little pill bottle. And then I'm using some of my like E30s markers for the little band-aids, the pill bottle, the clipboard, whatnot. One of my kind of go-to combos. I use this as a skin combo as well for like deeper, like not deeper, but slightly deeper or tanned skin. This is one of my favorite combos, which is the I have them sitting here, E35, E33, E31. And then sometimes, depending if I want to go darker, I'll go in with the darker browns. It just, again, depends on what I'm coloring and what I'm doing. But for band-aids, this is like the sort of my go-to combo because it's just the perfect, you know, set of colors. So colored all those in, use the darkest at the end to like add a little more definition where the little, you know, dots are on the band-aids. And then finished off everything with an aqua combo for the chart, and then I just did it for the labels and the little box of band-aids, kind of tie everything together. And didn't realize until, as always, until editing that, you know, the whole band-aid box was pretty much cut off from filming. But again, I wasn't doing anything, you know, groundbreaking with the coloring. So I did all my coloring. I fussy cut these because I don't have the coordinating wafer die set. I'll link to the coordinating wafer die set because I would 100% have used it. But I fussy cut them out. Wasn't a pleasant experience. My hands are just getting, you know, I'm having trouble with that kind of stuff, but for the right cards, I'll still do the fussy cutting. So I did it for these images. And then for the sentiment, this is the new big thank you wafer die from CZ Design. I was so excited that this was in the package because this is huge and I love it. There is an outline included. So you have the words and then the outline wafer die. I didn't use the outline. I used just the words. And off camera, I had just die cut it from white cardstock, and I had 3 layers stacked and adhered together. And the top layer, I die cut from my always will be all-time favorite. I hope they never discontinue this. The Tonic Gold Pearl Satin card. Love it. It's got that gold sheen to it, but because it's a satin finish, it's not super reflective, and it just, oh, I love it. I love it. So anyway, added that as my top layer. I have my white cardstock here, and I kind of, again, I had like laid everything out to make sure everything was going the way I wanted it to. This is cut to slightly smaller than what my card base will be. So I roughly cut, I think, like 1/2 inch off like each end. So this ended up being like, I think 3 by 8 inches, something like that. So I have my white cardstock. I've lined it up on my grid line mat, and then I'm using some blue painter's tape, and I'm sticking the painter's tape just to my arms, my hands, you know, let it pick up a little bit of the oils, etc. Just so it's not quite as sticky, even though this is a very low tack tape. I've shown this in a bunch of videos. This is great when you're watercoloring and taping things down. It's great for masking. But even though it's meant to like easily remove, it's still meant for walls. So I like to remove a little bit of the excess sticky just in case you don't, like, especially when you don't want it to tear your cardstock, watercolor paper, whatever. So I did that, and then I taped off just so I've masked like a border around the edge of the white cardstock. And then I blended on worn lipstick Distress Oxide ink. Went in way heavier than I originally intended. I've mentioned this before. I am very heavy-handed when it comes to blending and coloring and all that sort of thing. It's very difficult for me to do just soft fade to white. You know, that gorgeous look. Like the Laura Basson blending, still working on it. I don't have the patience, and I just slap the color on. So that's what I did here. Still looked pretty though. So I blended on the worn lipstick. I added a bit of splatter because I had to, you know, and then removed the painter's tape. When I did the splatter, I don't know if you can even see it on camera, on the lower like right, it still ended up seeping under the painter's tape just a tiny little bit, but it was bugging me. But I'm going to cover that up with the stethoscope, so you're not going to see it anyway. So that just kind of altered how I was going to lay out everything because I wanted to cover up that oops. Another thing, and I've shown this before too, is just like using an embellishment. You know, if you've got a little smear or, you know, a little splatter gone wrong or whatever, cover it up. Just stick something on top of it. No one's going to know. So once I was happy with my layout, I started adhering everything with Craft Tacky adhesive. So I just adhered, you know, the doctor's coat and the stethoscope. I put some acrylic blocks on top of that just to let it, you know, dry into the card front. And then I'm going to adhere these die cut sentiments, and then I'll adhere the remaining little bits of the images that I had colored and cut out. So then once I've got everything adhered and the card front is basically done, I'm going to set this aside, get to my card base, which is just some pink cardstock that I had cut down to 7 inches by 8.5 inches. So I'm going to score this at 3.5. So this will be a 3.5 inch by 8.5 inch slimline card. I normally don't mention measurements in most of my videos because I do, you know, standard A2. But with the slimline, I try to remember to mention the measurements because the slimline is not a set measurement, whereas A2, that is a set measurement. I've mentioned this in other videos, like A7 is a set measurement, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas slimline is technically not. It can go anywhere from this 3.5 by 8.5 up to, you know, 4.5 by 9, etc. So basically, if it fits in a business size envelope, it's considered a slimline card. So anywho, that's my card base though. It is 3.5 by 8.5. And then on the inside, I inked up another one of the sentiments from the Work of the Heart set, and I inked it up with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and then just stamped that onto the inside of the card. And then that little chart, I'm just going to adhere right next to it because it says your kindness is off the charts. Perfect for a thank you card. So got that adhered. And then on the outside of on the front of the card, I have some Doodlebug pattern paper, which has been like my go-to. I've loved Doodlebug since like day one, but I'm really loving the fact that I've hoarded pretty much all of their 12 by 12 paper all these years. It's coming in so handy with these cards. So I adhered one of the pattern papers to the front of the card. And then I was originally just going to adhere the card front flat to the card base, but instead decided to pop it up with some Big Mama foam tape from Simon. So just that little bit of extra dimension. And then after I peeled off the backing, I actually added Craft Tacky glue to this. This is just a little trick so that you have that wiggle room, because especially with this foam tape, once it's adhered, you're not pulling that up. You are not readjusting things like it's down. And it's, again, more and more lately, I'm getting worse at eyeballing things. So by adding the liquid glue, it gives you that wiggle room to, you know, shimmy everything into place before the glue sets, and then the foam tape glue touches everything and just it's permanently done. So that way I could get everything centered and not have to stress as much about it. So I did that. And then of course added a little bit of bling, just some Studio Caudia sky blue crystals and some golden crystals just to kind of tie all the colors together. And then once those are adhered, of course off camera I made a matching envelope using that same pattern paper, and I used the Trinity Stamps Slimline envelope builder wafer die set. I'll have a link to the wafer die set I showed in a previous video, which I'll link to in the playlist at the end of this video. Specifically like in that video how to make this envelope. But yeah, I'll link to the die set. I'll link to all the supplies I used as always. That will be in the description box below the video, as well as on my blog. All that info you can check out below. Thank you guys so much for watching, for subscribing, thumbs upping, commenting, sharing, all of it. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.